honestly, guys notice it more when you're out winning games, right? If Cleveland starts off in a bad start, they're not doing well, and all of a sudden Shedeur or Dillon Gabriel are doing well in 7-on-7, they're throwing dimes. In practice drills, the number one defense can't stop them. People take notice of that, and the more that the players see it, they're gonna then the comments start happening over the lunch table. They start happening throughout the building, and that's when the pressure really will get severe.
The Cleveland Browns really thought their biggest problem was just finding someone who could throw a straight pass, until Jason Kelce decided to casually blow up their whole operation with one comment that hit harder than a linebacker blitz.
We seen that miserable game by the Cleveland Browns. So they throw Joe Flacco in there, and I like Joe Flacco. He did good, but they gave him the resource of all the first-team guys. Then they throw Dillon Gabriel in there with first teams and second teams. So Dillon always is getting protected. The same thing again, they gave this scrub max protection on every play. Yeah, he completed some passes, but let's talk about his mistakes. He's still inconsistent with his throws, but he at least had max protection.
We're talking full-on chaos in the owner's office, pacing back and forth, slamming doors, probably Googling how to buy a new NFL team while chugging espresso. So, what exactly did Kelce say that's got the dog pound trembling and the front office sweating like it's draft night? Oh, you're not ready for this one. It's messier than their entire playbook. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, it helps more than you think. See, the Cleveland Browns have built an identity around two things: heartbreak and unintentional comedy. If losing was an Olympic sport, Cleveland would have a wall of gold medals by now.
They throw Shedeur Sanders in there with the lowest cab drivers you couldn't even get on 5th Street. And I'm pissed off, bro, because the play calling was abysmal. Look, even if you don't like Shedeur didn't even get a chance to be trash. Even if you think Shedeur is garbage, he didn't even get a chance to be garbage. That's how awful the offensive line was. Kevin Stefanski still doesn't want to give Shedeur second strings and first strings reps. Why is that? Now, what's more horrible about this game was it was to the point on every single snap.
Sitting right next to the Cowboys' ego-sized trophy case. And just when it seemed like the team had crawled out of their swamp of disaster, Kelce, a man who literally retired to drink beer and play golf, drops a truth bomb that basically said, "Congrats, Cleveland, your house of cards is officially on fire." And that's when their billionaire owner went from sipping his fancy coffee to typing, "How do I fire reality itself?" into Google like it was going to save him.
Knew that this was the guy that they wanted to start. He's seasoned, he's experienced, he still has a big-time arm, even at his age, and they open with the Cincinnati Bengals. They wanted that experienced guy. He was always going to be the guy. They were not going to start Dillon Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders in week 1. Kenny Pickett had a hamstring injury. It makes it easy to go with Joe Flacco. And the question isn't and wasn't going to be who's the starter in Cleveland. The question is who's going to be the backup in Cleveland. Who's going to be the number 2 quarterback when they open the season against these Bengals.
Classic Browns energy right there. This is the same franchise that once looked at Johnny Manziel and thought, yep, that's our Joe Montana. The same group that gave Hugh Jackson another year like it was a sequel nobody asked for and thought trading away dignity for Deshaun Watson was a power move. The Browns keep turning failure into an art form, and somehow fans still show up.
Couple days, 3 days until roster cutdowns. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like you belong here on this team?
Obviously, I think overall as a player, I feel like I put in the work. I feel like everything I do, I try to do it to my best, and that's all I ask for. So I feel like everybody feels like they should be on the team. And if you ask anybody on the team, would they feel like they belong? They belong, in their own eyes. So I feel like I do, but I'm my own player. I think about myself in a high regard.
Bless those loyal, battle-scarred souls, showing up every Sunday ready for hope, heartbreak, and chaos, wrapped in orange and brown. But here's the wild part. This past season almost fooled everyone. For a brief, shining moment, it looked like the Browns had finally figured it out. A functioning football team? Unheard of.
If you're a betting man, who do you think starts for the Browns at quarterback?
Okay, this is the situation. Kenny Pickett, they actually traded for him. Joe Flacco, no one's bringing Joe Flacco in the building thinking Joe Flacco is going to be the starter. If Joe Flacco is your starter,
You got a problem.
you have a huge problem. And if they were saying Shedeur was the starter as the 5th rounder, you got a real problem too, because he passed over all these guys in these reps in the offseason in shorts, in bikini shorts, Speedos and stuff. Like, no, that kind of stuff. So I'm not that surprised. When you put down a 3rd round pick on a quarterback, you do believe he has a certain skill set.
The Browns front office was already busy celebrating like they'd cracked the NFL code. Stefanski was getting labeled a mastermind, and the dog pound was howling so loud you'd think they'd won the Super Bowl. But then, boom, reality showed up and didn't just tap them on the shoulder, it hit them like a sack from Myles Garrett himself. And leading that reality check, Jason Kelce, baby. The same guy who spent years in Philly redefining what it means to be an offensive lineman and occasionally dressing like someone's wild aunt at a parade. Now retired and completely unfiltered, Kelce looked at Cleveland and didn't see contenders. He saw chaos held together by duct tape and denial.
Given what we saw yesterday with Shedeur Sanders, somebody on the Cleveland Browns is 100% getting fired, probably by the end of this year. The person who's probably going to end up getting fired is Kevin Stefanski, because I know that he didn't want Shedeur Sanders on the team. It was Andrew Berry who made that pick. You can't really go against your GM. Bad things happen in this situation. But Shedeur Sanders is not without fault for what we saw yesterday. This is the play that we saw yesterday that has the internet just exploding, where Shedeur Sanders took like a 24-yard sack. Half of the internet is saying that this is all Kevin Stefanski's fault.
He basically flashed a neon sign that screamed, "Cleveland, you're in deep trouble." Normally, the Browns front office would shrug it off. They've heard every insult in the NFL dictionary. But this time, it hit different. Because Kelce isn't some keyboard warrior tweeting hot takes from a basement. He's a Super Bowl champion, a respected vet, and a man who's lived inside a winning organization. When he talks, people listen. And when people start listening, Jimmy Haslam starts losing his mind.
Have the faith of a mustard seed, right? Because this is the greatest resurrection since Jesus the Christ, right? Like at some point, Joe Flacco was thinking about getting into TV, right? Joe Flacco didn't have a job, and then now you not only come back and start for the Cleveland Browns late in the 2023 season, but they came back around to you, and you're now the day one starter for a franchise that just 2 years ago was in the playoffs. And so when you
picture this. Haslam storming around his office, muttering about loyalty, while his assistants pretend to vanish behind their laptops. He's fuming, pacing, probably one bad headline away from throwing his phone through a window. And can you blame him? This is the same owner who sold his soul for Deshaun Watson's $230 million fully guaranteed deal. And what did he get in return? Missed games, rusty performances, and a financial mess that makes student loans look like pocket change. Kelce didn't even need to exaggerate. He just said what everyone's been thinking. Cleveland hitched their entire future to a quarterback who hasn't looked elite in years. Not even Joe Flacco's surprise playoff magic could cover up the long-term mess bubbling under the surface. And that's where the real comedy begins. Because Browns ownership doesn't get mad at the disasters they create. They get mad when someone dares to say it out loud. It's like a magician losing it because the crowd figured out the rabbit was hiding in the hat the whole time. Fans, on the other hand, weren't shocked. They were nodding.
This is the unofficial depth chart that they released prior to the preseason game, where now Tyler Huntley would be, right behind Flacco. They need to take Flacco and just put him away, get him ready for the Cincinnati Bengals. Like, don't even worry.
Put him in the cryo chamber that Bobby Carpenter sleeps in every night.
Does not need to play at all. Barely practice because they're having to sign now another quarterback. And keep in mind, they already have Watson, who's hurt.
Browns fans have a built-in radar for heartbreak. They can smell disaster before kickoff. They've lived through every possible version of collapse. So when they hear someone call it how it is, they don't argue. They sigh in agreement because they know when the writing's on the wall. And let's be real, injuries happen, defenses age, and when your entire franchise depends on one player whose massive contract eats the salary cap alive, all it takes is one bad hit for the whole thing to crumble, especially in the AFC North. That's not a friendly division, that's a war zone. The Ravens have Lamar Jackson, sprinting like he's got cheat codes activated. The Bengals have Joe Burrow, who could roll up in a hospital gown and still throw 3 touchdowns. And the Steelers? They never break. They just reload with more grit and more Mike Tomlin magic. Meanwhile, the Browns are that kid at recess who finally learned to tie his shoes, just to trip over them 5 seconds later. So yeah, Jason Kelce didn't just comment. He went straight for the sore spot with surgical precision. He reminded everyone that Cleveland's bright future looks less like a Super Bowl run and more like an unpaid parking ticket that keeps racking up late fees. And Haslam? Oh, he couldn't take it. Not because it was unfair, but because it was accurate. See, when someone like Jason Kelce speaks, it doesn't echo, it roars. And Jimmy Haslam? Let's just say grace under pressure has never been his thing.
I don't know what it is about the Cleveland team on why we can't get over this fact that we can't get our franchise quarterback. I mean, you see the jerseys. I'm tired of seeing the jerseys. I'm tired of the names just going and going and going. I literally thought Brandon Weeden was going to be our guy at one point. And then I'll never forget I think it was a preseason game, a flag goes over his head and he's trying to get out of the flag while they're doing the national anthem. And I'm like, oh my God, this is my starting quarterback?
This is the same guy who turned the Browns into a revolving door of coaches and quarterbacks, swapping them out like expired milk. Now Kelce strolls in, casually pointing out the obvious, and Cleveland's front office is losing its collective mind. Haslam reportedly went nuclear. You'd think someone had just insulted his grandmother instead of his football team? It's almost comical. The billionaire owner of an N.F.L. franchise pacing the floor, fuming, losing sleep over what a retired lineman said on a podcast, a lineman who doesn't even play in his division. But here's the thing. This isn't really about Jason Kelce himself. It's about what Kelce represents. He's the mirror Cleveland refuses to look into. He's that brutally honest friend who tells you your glow-up isn't glowing like you think it is. Kelce basically reminded the Browns that their magical run with Joe Flacco was just that, a fairy tale. A Cinderella story that hit midnight, the second reality showed up with a pumpkin and no glass slipper, and man, the irony here is chef's kiss.
So I gotta say this real quick. You were right, and I was wrong. We ain't never seen nothing like shit.
I told you! Let's go!
Because when you said that early on, I'm like, what are you talking about? They carried the games in Oklahoma, but that was just Oklahoma. That was for Baker. It was like the Oklahoma fan base. They carried the games in Norman, Browns games in Norman. I'm like, that was just as big.
Are you telling me that this is the biggest circus the Browns have ever been a part of?
Yes.
Jay, you not.
Yes.
Wait, because I remember, like, I'm not draft,
I told you.
I remember the Deshaun Watson circus.
The Browns have had one of the wildest quarterback situations in the entire league. Deshaun Watson was supposed to be the guy, the savior, the golden ticket, the man who dragged Cleveland out of the mud. Instead, he's been injured, inconsistent, and playing like someone still trying to remember what end zone he's aiming for. Then came Joe Flacco, the uninvited guest who stole the spotlight. Cleveland called him only after Watson's season fell apart, and the man showed up like it was 2012 all over again. He started launching deep balls, carving up defenses, and suddenly, the Browns looked like a real team again. For a moment, everyone was asking, wait, did Joe find the fountain of youth in his garage? But let's be honest, that comeback run didn't just lift the team, it exposed it. A 39-year-old who hadn't even been on the roster for 3 weeks came in and outshined their $230 million quarterback. That's not just awkward, that's franchise-level humiliation. The kind of thing that keeps owners up at night staring at spreadsheets and wondering where it all went wrong. So when Jason Kelce spoke up, he didn't throw shade. He tore the curtain down. He exposed the Wizard of Haslam, a billionaire clinging to hope while everyone else sees the truth. This team is one sprained ankle away from total collapse. No wonder Haslam was boiling. He's been out here selling fans on this dream of stability, of progress, of finally turning the Browns into a real contender. And then, out of nowhere, Jason Kelce strolls in, sipping his post-retirement smoothie, and casually tells the whole world, yeah, Cleveland's still a clown car on wheels. You could practically hear the record scratch from Berea to downtown Cleveland. And the fan reaction? Oh, that's what really sent Haslam over the edge. Browns fans weren't mad at Kelce. They were cracking up. They flooded social media with memes, sarcastic "we're doomed" tweets, and even thanked him for finally saying what they've been yelling into their pillows for years. When your own fan base starts agreeing with an outsider more than their billionaire owner, that's not criticism. That's a crisis. Then the media storm hit, and it was brutal. Sports talk shows devoured the story like it was Thanksgiving dinner. Headlines screamed about a Cleveland crisis. Debates exploded over whether Deshaun Watson was the biggest mistake in franchise history, and rival fans from Pittsburgh to Cincinnati joined the pile-on just for fun. And the worst part? Cleveland couldn't even deny it. They could have a top 5 defense, a playoff berth, and a Coach of the Year winner. And still somehow, some way, they'd be branded as a disaster in progress. Because, let's be honest, most of this mess, it's self-inflicted. Other teams make mistakes. The Browns marry theirs. They don't just trip on the sidewalk. They build a monument to tripping, cut a ribbon, and invite the press to celebrate it.
Also, can't blame anybody who says, I don't necessarily trust this coaching staff to develop a quarterback or to evaluate the quarterback position. They've made some really oddball decisions at this position over the last several years, and I don't blame anybody for questioning, do these guys actually know what they're doing?
I don't think that's unfair at all. The thing I would say is that they're desperate. They're very desperate. Like the entire organization is desperate. And if you really think they're going back to the coaches' offices and all getting around the table after sessions and being like, guys, Shedeur is unbelievable, but I really think we should try to prove that Dylan is better than him because we drafted him 2 rounds.
That Watson contract wasn't a gamble. It was a kamikaze dive into chaos with every single dollar guaranteed. It was the kind of deal that made every other NFL owner stare in disbelief and whisper, they really did that? So now, when Jason Kelce points out that the team is handcuffed by their own decision, it hits deep, because he's right. The Browns are trapped. They can't cut him, they can't trade him, and unless Watson magically morphs back into his Houston prime, Cleveland is stuck dragging that contract like a ball and chain for years to come. Meanwhile, Joe Flacco came in looking like the ghost of Christmas past, reminding everyone what real quarterback play used to look like. Browns fans didn't know whether to cheer or cry. The whole thing felt straight out of a sitcom. The man had barely unpacked his suitcase, and suddenly he was out there saving their season, while Deshaun Watson sat on the bench, stacking guaranteed millions like poker chips. That's not a fairy tale. That's pure absurdity. And yet here we are. Jason Kelce pointed at the Browns and said what everyone else was too polite or too scared to say. This team might look solid on the surface, but underneath, the foundation's cracked. And that's exactly why Jimmy Haslam absolutely lost it. He doesn't care about flaws. Every team has them. What he cares about is control. See, billionaires don't fear bad plays. They fear bad perception. They hate losing the narrative. They want fans to believe everything's fine, progress is real, and that buying another $120 jersey is basically investing in future glory. Jason Kelce smashed that fantasy to pieces in one sentence. In one breath, he made the Browns look less like contenders and more like the NFL's favorite reality show, full of drama, denial, and déjà vu. And that's the hilarious tragedy of it all. The Browns just can't escape their own shadow. They can stockpile talent, ride a hot streak, even sneak into the playoffs. But the second a retired lineman tells the truth, the whole organization unravels like a cheap suit. Because this isn't just about football anymore. It's about pride, ego, and image. It's about a franchise that keeps tripping on its own shoelaces while insisting, we're fine, everything's fine. It's the eternal comedy of Cleveland, a team forever one step away from greatness, but somehow always slipping back into chaos. And if you really want to understand why Jason Kelce's words hit Cleveland like a bomb, just look at the receipts. This isn't about hurt feelings. It's math, contracts, injuries, and cold reality. The Browns are playing in a division where good enough means you're already dead. Deshaun Watson is either hurt, rusty, or out there looking like a guy who accidentally wandered in from a YMCA flag football game. And every single time fans start to hope he'll turn back into Houston-era Deshaun, he reminds them that hope in Cleveland always comes with heartbreak. Reality has a cruel way of reminding Cleveland that $230 million guaranteed doesn't buy miracles. It just buys a front-row seat to disappointment. And then there's Joe Flacco, the ultimate punchline turned prophecy. The man was basically retired, probably spending more time comparing lawn fertilizer than studying game film, and yet he strolls in and out, plays Deshaun Watson like it's nothing.
Shedeur Sanders is expected to start for the Cleveland Browns.
How about that?
Friday night in their preseason opener.
I'd be excited, obviously, if I'm a Browns fan. Like the fact that you get to see him, like that's fun. Like if you're a fan of that team, that's fun that you get to see this guy that is this huge polarizing figure, especially coming out of this NFL draft. I wonder if it's kind of a disservice to him, though.
How?
Because he's been the fourth string quarterback, like, and you're just kind of throwing him in there. I don't know.
If I'm the fourth string quarterback and I get named the starter, I want it. How do you move it?
That's not a feel-good story. That's an indictment. That's the universe flashing a neon sign that says, you paid how much for Watson? But wait, it gets worse. Because this isn't just a quarterback problem. It's a financial nightmare. Watson's deal didn't just dent the salary cap. It handcuffed it tighter than an overzealous TSA agent. Nearly a quarter of Cleveland's entire payroll is tied up in one player who can't stay healthy, can't find rhythm, and can't silence the noise. That means every season, the Browns are out here patching holes with duct tape and prayers. Instead of building depth like real contenders do, they're scrambling to plug leaks before the next injury wave hits. And in the AFC North, that's a death sentence. This isn't a cozy division where everyone's mediocre and you can luck your way into first place. This is the N.F.L. Hunger Games. The Ravens are stacked. Lamar Jackson's out there running video game plays. Mark Andrews catches everything within 5 zip codes. And that defense, it makes quarterbacks question their life choices. The Bengals, they've got Joe Burrow, calm, cool, deadly accurate. The guy could probably throw touchdowns blindfolded with one arm tied behind his back and still grin for the camera. And then there are the Steelers, the most annoyingly consistent team in football. They might not even know who their starting quarterback is half the time. And yet somehow, some way, Mike Tomlin refuses to let them collapse. The man could coach a team of traffic cones to 9 wins and still have them in playoff contention. Meanwhile, Cleveland's sitting there with a $230 million quarterback, no cap space, and a growing sense that the joke might not be on the rest of the league anymore. It's on them. So where does that leave the Browns? Exactly where Jason Kelce said, in trouble. They're like the guy who shows up to a heavyweight fight wearing pool floaties, trying to act confident while everyone else is throwing punches. Sure, their defense was elite last season, but that kind of dominance doesn't roll over year after year, not without real consistent support. Injuries hit, players age, coordinators get poached by other teams, and suddenly, that unstoppable defense starts looking very human. When that happens, all the pressure shifts right back to the offense, and that's where Cleveland's stuck in a nightmare. Because that offense is being held hostage by one of the worst contracts in NFL history, a deal so ridiculous it should be dissected in college economics classes. And let's not forget the injury curse, because the Browns know it too well. Their medical staff probably feels like they're running an ER, not an N.F.L. facility. Every week, it's a new report. Hamstring here, ankle there, someone else day to day. It's almost comical how predictable it's become. That's what makes Kelce's comments sting even more. He didn't expose a secret. He just said out loud what every Browns fan mumbles under their breath after the third injury update of the week. This team isn't built to survive disaster. It's one bad break away from imploding completely. And with their luck, that bad break might as well be penciled into the schedule. The fans know it, the rivals know it, and deep down, the organization knows it too. Sure, they've got stars on defense, playmakers on offense, and a coaching staff that, for now, seems competent. But paper talent doesn't win in the AFC North. Reality does. And in that reality, the Browns are one rolled ankle, one missed block, one more Watson setback away from watching the same old story play out all over again. And reality doesn't sugarcoat it. If you want to survive in the AFC North, you need a reliable quarterback, cap flexibility, and some serious durability to stand toe-to-toe with Baltimore, Cincinnati, and Pittsburgh, and Cleveland. They've got none of that. Jimmy Haslam can fume, stomp around, and rewrite as many press releases as he wants, but he can't outrun the truth. He can spin every story, flash that trust the process grin, and push all the "we're building something special" headlines. But the math doesn't lie. The cap is cooked, the division's a war zone, and that monster contract isn't going anywhere. The Browns are still chained to their own bad choices, and no amount of PR gloss can hide that. Sure, Joe Flacco's magical cameo gave fans a temporary high. It was fun while it lasted. But deep down, everyone knows it didn't fix the foundation. It just slapped a fresh coat of paint over a cracked wall. So yeah, Cleveland, Jason Kelce didn't just throw shade. He told the truth. You're in trouble. And judging by the receipts, by the contracts, by the results, he's not wrong. Not even a little bit. Make sure you hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Drop a comment below with your take on this wild Browns saga, and I'll catch you in the next one.